Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Welcome back to Shadows of the Bat, a four-part retrospective on Batman the Animated Series. Welcome to the fourth and final part of this retrospective, in which I discuss the fourth and final season of BTAS. Before we get into it, let's get some history out of the way. While Batman was running on the air, it was popular enough to warrant a spin-off featuring another iconic character, that being Superman. Superman had a few key differences with Batman, however. For starters, the animation style was less detailed and more streamlined, and it was also more serialized, while Batman didn't really require that, and you could just jump in randomly. All the episodes were standalone. Now, since Superman was a success, WB thought that they would give Batman one last run with a fourth and final season that brought everything to a close. Well, almost. Unfortunately, that meant the detailed animation style was gone in favor of the newer one, which I will get to in a minute. The show did well in ratings, but was polarizing to many, with people mainly hating on redesigns and certain episodes being not so great. What are my thoughts about it? Well, you're going to find out today. This is the fourth and final season of BTAS, The New Batman Adventures. So, what's new about TNBA? Well, for starters, Batman teams up with Batgirl more frequently, and Dick Grayson has become Nightwing, leading to Tim Drake's inception as Robin. But still, the plot is pretty much the same as the first three seasons, Batman and the gang protecting Gotham from the scum and villainy. So overall, I have mixed feelings about TNBA. Sometimes I like it, and sometimes I don't. Most of the time, I consider it its own show rather than a connection to the first three seasons, which I remind you that season one is one of my favorite seasons of TV. TNBA is good, but it's not that great, and it's definitely my least favorite of BTAS. It's not the worst thing ever, but it's not the best. It's a shame, though. I started watching Superman for my review of it coming soon, and the first season of that show is really good so far. So I don't know why they dropped the ball with Batman, but we'll get to that when I talk about some of the bad episodes. Yes, this season has bad episodes. But I feel like we should discuss some characters, and when I say some, I don't mean the new ones. I have an excuse to talk about some of the old ones again. Let's face it, all of them went through a change. And I don't mean that figuratively. I'm serious. All the characters had a facelift with Superman's animation style. And I want to discuss with you the designs I like, the designs I don't, and then the new characters. So let's start. Batman's design is pretty decent. It's not as good as the one he sported in the first three seasons, but I do like it. The colors are a bit duller, there's more black, and overall, he looks like Batman. Dick Grayson's Robin is pretty straightforward, and he's taken right from the first three seasons, but we only see it for one episode, as most of the time he's Nightwing. The Nightwing suit looks cool, and it's the only design with essentially one solid color that I like. Batgirl has a design that I can't say quite works for me. The black is okay, but the yellow is a little much for me. Sometimes it works with the tone, but other times I miss the old one. Also, she's voiced by Tara Strong in this season. She's not as good as Melissa Gilbert, but I still like her voice. Alfred looks weird. Maybe it's because his head is such a weird shape. I don't know. He still looks like Alfred, but he just seems off. Commissioner Gordon is a design I do not like at all. I don't like the fact that they made him skinny. It makes him look sick. It's like he's dying of cancer. They could have kept him looking average like he was in the first three seasons. But they didn't for some reason. Other than that, the ingredients from Jim's previous design still remain. Bullock and Montoya are simplified versions of their older counterparts, which I'm perfectly fine with. Alright, now we get into some of the villains, and bear with me because some of these are going to be harsh criticisms. Two-Face and Harley Quinn are also simplified versions from their older counterparts, and I think that works for the most part. There isn't much of a change here. They were the simplest designs before, and they still are in this show. Clayface looks good, but his head looks squished into his body. It doesn't bother me too much, but it is noticeable. Also, the clay is also darker than the beige color from the previous seasons. And for some reason, he can make full metal blades from his protoplasm. Really? Okay, fine. Have it your way then. Poison Ivy has a darker green suit and a much paler skin color, which I think was supposed to be green, but I don't really know. The hair color is okay, and the lips being green, I don't mind. Maybe if it didn't look too much like a swimsuit with boots and gloves, then it would have been better. I don't know. The Riddler has a neat design. I like the spandex suit as an homage to the original variant, and the face is alright. I still would have preferred a mask around his eyes as opposed to earlier, but that's my personal preference. Also, next time, give him something to do. The Penguin is ripped straight out of the comics, but I will admit I missed the original version from the previous seasons. Mr. Freeze I like and dislike at the same time. The suit looks good and the blue color fits, but the spider leg thing really bothers me. Also, Freeze's inclusion bothers me because he had the perfect ending in Sub-Zero, but that's just my personal thoughts. Killer Croc is I like a lot more than the stupid gray design from the first three seasons, and the voice of Brooks Gardner rather than Aaron Kincaid also fits really well. But why pair him up with Baby Doll? Speaking of which, Baby Doll looks like an actual doll this time around, and the voice isn't as good as the previous season. Still, she's a worthy addition to the cast. Now, Bane has a design that I love. The black suit, the red venom tube, and the gimp mask make him look very intimidating. I still like the older one better, but I still think Bane had a great design in this season, as well as in Superman and Mystery of the Batwoman. Scarecrow also had a really good design, but in my opinion, not as good as the older one. I'm sorry, I know that's unpopular, but I think this one looks more like a zombie than a scarecrow, so his more comic accurate design is better. Now we get to talk about my two least favorite designs in this entire run, starting with the most infamous. I'm gonna say it right now. The Joker looks bad. The suit isn't too bad, but the face is awful. What the hell did they do to him? They sucked all of the color out of his face and made him look like Freakazoid. It's so bad. Thankfully, it was fixed later online, but this was a disastrous design. Yet he's not the worst design in this run, in my opinion. That trophy goes to Catwoman. Ugh. Honestly, this one is just lazy. The original was beautifully drawn and was unique. This one has no color whatsoever, and the face being pale doesn't work for me. The original intention was to base the original design off of the Batman Returns variant, which is ironic considering the new one looks a lot more like the Batman Returns variant, but I digress. I hate this design, and I hope I never have to stare at it for more than 30 seconds again. Now let's move on to the new characters. We've got a new Robin in the form of Tim Drake, voiced by Matthew Valencia. And in all honesty, I'm not a fan of what they did to Tim's character. They turned him into Jason Todd, a wisecracker who thinks before he acts. They didn't implement Jason into this universe until the comic series, which you should read, but they didn't have to butcher Tim. He's good in some moments, but bad in others. Now he has some new villains to discuss, starting with Calendar Girl. I guess she's a version of Calendar Man, but she doesn't add anything to the plot whatsoever. She's just kind of there for no reason. Roxy Rocket is okay, but the idea was better than the execution. Enoch Brown was a stereotype and really just awful, which I didn't like. And the judge was just Two-Faced, which is why he's not in this photo. So yeah, the new villains aren't really all that in this season. We also have the debut of Firefly, which is awesome, but he doesn't really do anything despite that one episode he had. Overall, the characters serve their purpose, but the only really good ones are the ones who left an impression. They are nowhere near as good as the characters from the previous seasons, but also their versions in the comics. That's kind of sad, but in all honesty, I don't think that these are bad adaptations. They're just not the very best. I will tell you something that is pretty good: the animation. No, really. It's not as detailed as the original run. Yes, it's not as creative. No, it's not terrible. It's still very high quality. The drawings themselves are just very less stylized. The music, as I said before, is great through and through. Shirley Walker knew what she was doing when she wrote and composed the music, and she passed with flying colors. Well done, again. Alright, before I give my final thoughts, I want to talk about the good and the bad episodes, starting with the bad ones. You Scratch My Back. A Catwoman and Nightwing crossover that had infinite potential but went so far off the rails. The bad guy with the hook was generic and could have been replaced with Bane. Catwoman's design also hurts my eyes, as said earlier. The Demon Within. This one hurt because Etrigan is one of my favorite non-main DC characters. The thing that bugged me most about it was the kid. Seriously, why not someone else skilled with magic, like Felix Faust or Dr. Destiny? Those two did arrive in Justice League, by the way. The kid was annoying and one of the worst characters written on this show. Critters. Not terrible, but terribly goofy. This feels like something out of Super Friends or Scooby Doo, not a show like this. But screw it, it's not as bad as the previous two. Cold Comfort. Easily the most disappointing episode of this season and the series overall. Free shouldn't be doing something like this. His motivation is for Nora and Nora only. Also, nothing else. The robot body, though. That's still bad. Okay, enough negativity. Let's talk about the good stuff. Holiday Nights. A really fun Christmas special. A Harley and Ivy Christmas, shoplifting, Batgirl vs. Clayface, and New Year's with the Joker. None of these titles are official. Do I have to say anything else? Old Wounds. The missing piece to Dick Grayson's story. Satisfying story to feature one of my favorite characters in the DC universe. Over the Edge. If Batman was a fugitive, this one's a banger. Check it out. Legends of the Dark Knight. Amazing concept and amazing execution. Perfect episode. Check it out. Joker's Millions. Joker's romp on the city with mass amounts of money. Do I need to say more? Mad Love. The perfect Joker and Harley story. Easily a great episode and one of the best moments of the Joker in this series. Check it out. Alright, what did I think of this season? Well, I wasn't too keen on it. It's not bad, but it's not great either. It's the weakest of the seasons and one of my least favorite things about the DC animated universe, next to some of the non-canon comics. Batman Beyond 2.0, I'm looking at you. I give this one a 7 out of 10. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't too good either. This doesn't feel just like a satisfying ending to Shadows of the Bats. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make one more part that covers the greatest Batman film ever released. Yes, better than Batman 89. Yes, better than The Dark Knight. And yes, better than the Reeves film. You already know what it is, and if you don't, well, then you'll find out next week. So with that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.